Yeah, as far as Marco looking up to Robert Fitzpatrick, and a lot of the other anti-MLM Huns do as well. The guy just doesn't know what he's talking about. He was the first on the scene, and that's how he has his position. But he's never been in an MLM. He was in a airplane game back in the 1980s, which is a productless pyramid scheme. And he's never been in an MLM, so he just doesn't know. And more importantly, he doesn't want to talk to somebody like me who has been in an MLM and can describe things as far as how they actually work versus somebody just guessing at it. And probably the biggest thing in his book, and I could list a whole laundry list of different things that he gets wrong, but the biggest thing in my mind is how he talks about the endless chain and saturation. And all people have to do is go to the Ger-Ro-Mar case against the FTC. It's GER-RO-MAR, Ger-Ro-Mar. Google that plus FTC, and you'll see that the judge completely rejected the argument from the FTC that this Ger-Ro-Mar company was capable of saturating, and he just threw it out. In fact, he mocked them. He made fun of the FTC lawyers. If he wasn't a legal guy, he would say you're stupid, because it was a stupid argument. It had nothing to do with reality, and judges don't look at fantasy. In fact, he even said the words to the effect of, "We don't live in a fantasy land." And so it's just ridiculous. And it's not just Narco, it's all the other anti-MLM Huns that love Robert Fitzpatrick, and they have no reason to believe what he says. Now, the FTC also tried that argument in the Amway case in 1979, and the judge similarly rejected it. And to my knowledge, the FTC has not tried that again. So that's, one thing that Fitzpatrick gets wrong every single time.
Scott, this idea that Robert Fitzpatrick was the first on the scene, it's completely wrong. I've just done some research, and Robert Fitzpatrick's first book was in 1997. Now, there were several books written on the Amway Corporation in the 1980s. The first example I can find was a book called Fake It Until You Make It, and this was written in 1982. This was written before Robert Fitzpatrick had ever even joined the airplane game. So the idea that Robert Fitzpatrick is the number one anti-MLMer on the planet is because he got in first is completely wrong. There were several people that were anti-MLMers long before Robert Fitzpatrick. Now, they may not have followed the same course that today's anti-MLMers do on YouTube, but there were several books. Just three of them. Amway, The Cult of Free Enterprise. That was in 1985. Fake It Until You Make It, 1982. And Merchants of Deception. Now, it was written in the 80s. I can't find the exact publication date, but long before Robert Fitzpatrick was the number one most well-known anti-MLMer on the planet. And your point about he's never been in an MLM. Well, I don't think you need to be in an MLM to understand it. Just the same as you don't need to be an ex-basketball or even to have played basketball to be very knowledgeable on basketball and to be a very good basketball commentator. And I think in many sports, often the very best, the most knowledgeable commentators are guys that have never, ever played the sport before. You talk about Robert not speaking to people like you. Well, I've watched several videos on YouTube where Robert Fitzpatrick has spoken to people who have been in MLMs, people just like you with your exact or similar experiences. He is open to talk to people. He doesn't just talk to the big anti-MLM YouTubers. He actually speaks to a lot of the smaller ones too. So I feel like you're wrong there. We come back to this point that me and you have argued about endlessly for a long time. This is this endless chain. I think your argument is that with the endless chain. Well, it's not going to happen because everybody is going to quit. Therefore, it's a bad argument. But the point is, if everyone was to join and to stay in, you would run out of people. It's unsustainable. You cannot just have five recruiting five. If it was to work that way, which it wouldn't, because companies like Amway are junk, the products are overpriced, everyone will quit. But if people were to stay in, you would run out of people. And then you talk about it's not possible to be saturated. Now, Amway and these other MLM companies, they claim to be direct selling companies. Now, there are far too many direct sellers out there. There's literally thousands of them. It's saturated. There cannot be thousands and thousands of them all making huge money at the same time. There quite simply is not enough demand for direct selling for there to be the current number. It is well and truly saturated. And the last point is you talk about the FCC is not tried again. Well, not in the USA, because quite simply, the Amway Corporation in particular has paid off every single major political party in the United States of America. They have paid them off. They have paid off people and got people into the FTC. And that is why in America there has been no further action, and the FTC has sat idle and allowed these companies to destroy the lives of so many people and to defraud so many people. Overseas, though, this is not the case. The MLM industry has been closed down in China. I'm just going to give two examples here. I could probably talk for another 10 minutes about other examples. There was a major case in the UK in 2006 where the UK Trade Commission went after the Amway Corporation in a big way, and they revealed that 99.7% of everyone in the UK who had joined the Amway Corporation had lost money. So you're wrong when you say that the FTC, well, you're kind of right. The FTC haven't done much, but there's been action in other countries. And the reason why the FTC hasn't done it again is not because the 1979 case was flawed, but because companies like the Amway Corporation have become very political and they've donated a lot of money. That's the real reason. Robert FitzPatrick, in my mind, is the most knowledgeable man on the MLM industry on the planet. I've just actually watched, doing some research on how to respond to what you said just before, listened to an interview with Robert FitzPatrick on a local, I think it was a local radio station. I'm going to upload it onto this channel shortly. It is outstanding. His knowledge of the multi-level marketing industry is, in my opinion, second to none. I can kind of understand your frustration, though, with him, in that you were very focused on the Amway Tool Scam. Robert FitzPatrick does not spend a lot of time talking about the Amway Tool Scam. I think that is in part because he's talking about MLMs as a whole. He's not just talking about Amway. So a lot of these other MLMs, they've got tools, but the tool scam is nowhere near as big and as bad as what it is in the Amway Corporation. It does not do the same sorts of damage that the Amway Tool Scam does, which I think is in part why he'd spend of talking about it. My view is that in the multi-level marketing industry is damaging with or without the tool scam. The Amway Tool Scam makes it far worse. My view is people who join Amway actually experience more damage and they're hurt more than people that join other MLMs, simply because Amway has got this out of control, I would call it an evil tool scam. So we agree that we're probably both a little bit frustrated with FitzPatrick about the Amway Tool Scam more, maybe for underestimating it, but that does not take away the fact that his knowledge about the MLM industry as a whole, in my view, is second to none. And I think Marco agrees with me on that, and I think Marco's spot on. And yeah, I really think you need to listen more closely to what Robert is saying and maybe not focus more on what he is saying as opposed to what he's not saying. Because I know you're frustrated at the fact that he doesn't talk much about the Amway Tool Scam.